meeting to order. We'll start with the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I want to thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. Talia will not be with us tonight. Seeing no translation needs, we'll go on to approval of the agenda.
I make a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Sorry. So carried. Do we have any public comment for tonight? Okay. Board member discussion. I have not got a legislative report tonight, but I did want to bring up the WASDA conference. I noticed registration has started or open for that. And I don't know if we just want to register for the board members, because I know hotels there are tight, especially to get the one where the conference is at. Okay. Is there any other discussion for board member discussion for tonight?
No, just adding on top of that, we usually have attendance with our student reps too, so
Okay.
to WASDA.
Okay. With no more discussion, we'll go on to our student representative.
All right. Good afternoon. Oh, is this working? Yes, it is. It's amazing to see everyone in this room today. My report will be about the school board Instagram page. I recently spoke with Mr. Peterson on the idea of reviving the Instagram school page since not that much people follow it. I am aware that there is a Facebook page, but I noticed that adults use Facebook more than Instagram, and more students use Instagram than Facebook. So I believe that reviving the Instagram page will be very beneficial for the school board, since now they will be able to share information with our students through online posts. The best way to revive this is through advertisement. As the student representatives, Jada and I will gladly step up to post the current page on our personal social media accounts to encourage our classmates to follow the same page, which in return will have classmates of classmates follow that same page. I'm also willing to do flyers at school, so I can hang them up and students who pass by can see them. I would like to thank Mr. Peterson for cooperating with me on this idea, and I would also like to thank everyone else for listening and giving me the time to speak today. Thank you.
Thank you,
Sounds great.
Sebastian. I think that's a good idea
Mhm.
Yes.
to step up that work.
Yep.
Okay. Any comments by Ed for that? Because I know he's working with you, so.
What they come up with, Jaden and Sebastian are going to be using a tool called Classic Account with their staff to submit content to social media from their perspectives about proposed activities, and it's a good part of the plan, a good cog in the wheel for how we can elevate student voice and share their perspective with the community.
It's great, good.
Thank you.
Okay, now we'll go on to required approvals.
I motion to approve the required approvals.
Okay,
I'll second that.
we got a first and second. Any discussion on them? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so carries. Accounts payable warrants 2.
I make a motion to approve accounts payable warrants 2.
I second.
Okay, and I will be abstaining from this vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So carries. We're zipping right through the agenda tonight. Superintendent informational items.
Yeah, we're about to slow you down now. Just a couple of items this evening. The draft superintendent goals for this next school year are listed there. It's a little bit along the lines of policy and procedure. We were hoping to consider this maybe like a first reading, so have the board have a chance to look through them and consider them and perhaps provide feedback at the next board meeting. But I just wanted to make you aware that those were listed there. The bulk of the superintendent items this evening will be focused on an OSD graduation concept that we'd like to share with the board and engage in a conversation with the community. So I'd like to invite Amy Paris forward, Tim Taff, and Greg Foltz. And we want to share some information with the board and the community about graduation in the Othello School District. So we want to start off by certainly acknowledging the tradition of graduation, not only in Othello, but across the country. It's a milestone in everyone's life that we know certainly the focus of K-12 education is to get students to that graduation finish line and set them up for a post-secondary experience. But there's also the event, right? That culminating event where families come and have a moment and take their pictures and memorialize all the hard work of their students and then the community that surrounds them. And certainly the graduation in Othello, I think is something to be proud of. The traditions that we have out there, the hard work of the staff to get the facility ready, and just some of the things that many of you in this room graduated from Othello High School, and there's consistency in the experience for students. Having said that, and honoring all those traditions, there's also been a dramatic change in the number of students at Othello High School, and with that comes a number of families and others that want to participate and observe graduation. And that has created some challenges related to safety, logistics, and making sure we can offer a student-centered graduation for our kids. And so today we want to talk with you a little bit about the Spectator Experience and what we have begun to notice as some challenges with making sure we have enough space for folks who want to have an opportunity to observe graduation. We estimated this year that we had between 32 and 3,500 folks in attendance at graduation, and that worked out to about 11 or 12 per student. And as we'll show you here in a minute, that gradual increase in students in the Othello School District is going to add to that crowd and what we can handle safely at Husky Field. We also should acknowledge that there have been issues with the sound system and the heat and the wear, and sort of those things that come with having an outdoor experience. I guess it's not unlike having an outdoor wedding. It can be a beautiful moment and you hope for the best, but you also have the danger and the risk of not having that experience. One of the other things we wanted to make you aware of related to the Spectator Experience, for those of you that were there, for the board, certainly there's VIP seating. You're up front. You have a great view. That's not everyone's experience. And if you look at that image, you can see the folks that kind of complete the top of that circle, not the folks in the seating on the west end, which we traditionally wouldn't use as seating, but we needed more space this year. It's those more informal folks that are standing kind of at the edge. They're just to the right and left of the graduates. Those aren't official seats. Some folks have started to bring lawn chairs just so they can be comfortable and just so they can get a good view, but it's not something that we set up and are intentional about. There are also many folks who have obstructed views, and it's just a challenge to manage the number of spectators that are coming. And for those of you that are up on the stage and handing out the diplomas and having that one-on-one moment with the students, there's also the experience of families trying to rush up and take a picture. Do they get that opportunity to come up? Everybody has a cell phone and wants to capture the moment and shoot a little bit of video. And it just becomes a challenge to manage the crowd. And so what we want to talk with you about tonight is a concept and something we're considering, not something that we've decided, but something that we're strongly considering. And I wanted to share this graph on slide 5 with you about the FTE count and remind you that if we do have 11 or 12 students or spectators per student, we're going to approach 5,000 folks in Husky Stadium. And Tim's going to share with you some of the safety concerns around that number of folks. But it's just the gradual increase in the number of students in the Othello School District. We expect next year that we're going to be right at around 300, the highest number we've ever had. And you can see what happens to our rising juniors and our rising sophomores. Large groups of kids coming up through our system. So I wanted to have Greg talk a little bit about logistics and kind of what it means to set up graduation.
Okay, so Maintenance department, technology, transportation's included also. We start about 3 weeks before graduation. We're still dealing with sports. We're still dealing with state competitions, but we have to get started about that time to get the grass ready. We fertilize and make sure that grass is looking good. We start moving bleachers. We have about 26 bleachers we move. We round up as many chairs as we can find. We have about 1,400 folding chairs in the district. We start getting things rounded up for that. We start testing things. We're testing lighting. We're testing the sound system. We're testing cameras for the online and recording. So I started to work up how many hours we put into it to give you guys an idea, and I just couldn't come up because we're fitting this in with our regular duties, right? School's still going on. We're still maintaining things. Water just came on in April. So for logistics-wise, we're trying to fit this all in and set it all up. And then also, we're thinking about a backup plan, right? We're setting up for a backup plan if the weather's bad, if something goes, we have to change to a gym, or maybe we have to change to another location. We're thinking about all those things while we do this. So there's quite a few man hours involved, obviously, set up and tear down, and a lot going on when we start going through the checklist. And then we're also thinking about senior pranks. How are we going to deal with those the night before? We've had some pretty cool senior pranks and some bad ones too, but you know. So that's logistically, we're thinking about all those things for setup, tear down, to make the thing go without a hitch, make it run smooth so that the graduates can have the experience they want. Any questions before we move on?
I do want to provide a comment around that. Certainly appreciate Greg sharing the perspective of trying to calculate the number of man hours. What I have observed over the last 10 years or so are how seamless they make it feel. We know it's going to be set up. We know the ropes are going to be there. We know they're going to paint the lines. We know the chairs are going to show up. It all just sort of happens. But I think it's important to note that it's an awful lot of work to get that done properly, and to be hopeful that the weather's going to hold. It's not going to be too hot for folks. We're not going to get wind and rain. We're not going to have sound issues. And the last few years, the work of the technology department, making sure we can stream that for folks who can't be there. It's an awful lot of work for our staff to get that done and make it look as nice as it does. And now Tim's going to talk a bit about some safety concerns.
Yeah, so I'm gonna be heavy. You're gonna be my clicker. So these are a couple shots right here for just to kind of give you some ideas of perspective for us. Just think of, as you're looking at this slide and the next one, just how much green is around there, how many people proximate in that area, which is really great. We want to be prepared for as much as we can in this area, and so consideration-wise is not only how many people can get there, but how do we get people out? You know, if we need to in a hurry, and other portions as well. So let's go to the next slide. So just kind of highlight some of the safety concerns. Getting people in is one idea. This doesn't look too significant, but if you go to the next slide, it gives you a little perspective on one gate of people, and this is just a casual exit to manage one of the exits there. Here, I just started listing a bit of the safety concerns with the next few clicks of the mouse. One is number one, parking. Where do we park people? Are they parked safely? Do we do any remote parking and busing? I just go through these options of what could we do, you know what I mean, to make this space work. Traffic flow. We're in a small town, and we got a lot of people that want to come, and a lot of visitors that come from out of town as well. How do we manage them? Pedestrian traffic, once they get out of those cars and getting them safely across roads and into our location. I think of security staff and training, just considering different people's ideas, and trying to keep our community safe and have a good experience. But what about safety screening? My daughter just graduated from college, and one of the screenings was you actually couldn't bring a closed purse. It had to be a clear bag if you're going to bring a bag with you in there. And there were other considerations. There was an outside jumbotron you could see, but you couldn't go into the building unless you went through the screening with a clear bag carrying your belongings. Another one is communication. If we did need to communicate to a large group, how would we do it? Or to the staff and the people cooperating to try to make this happen. So those are some of the things that buzz through my mind. The last is an emergency evacuation. What if we had to? It doesn't necessarily have to be a tragedy. It could also be a medical emergency that we may need. Having someone who just a little over a year ago had to be rushed to the hospital. What if that had happened in the middle of a graduation ceremony or someone else? And just trying to think through those concerns and availability and to be able to prepare for other people. So in light of that, this is so in cooperation with who might have to help with those, I went to the fire department, police department, fire department, and asked them to look at this setting and what are the considerations to hold a large gathering and to do it safely, and what do we need to think about preparation-wise. So these yellow dots are the 4 exits that were identified. This is a plan put together by Adams County Fire Department 5. There's one more. These yellow dots, they are the gates that we figured as exits. There's about 58.5 feet of egress width there. One more click there. This is a plan to come up with some considerations if we're going to use those gates. Are they? Sorry. Is it me? My voice has been changing for a while. So part of this plan, just kind of the numbered pieces on the right-hand side. 4 gates to egress. In Adams County 5, idea is if we're going to have those gates, they need to be manned. They need to be available to be open. It shouldn't be, oh, we're having an emergency. Who has a key to the gate to get it open so that people can get out? Then they would need to swing out. They need to be identified. How do you get out? It reminds me of when if you've flown, here's the exits, here, here, and here. Here's what you do to get out. Communication. We're having a large crowd. If you should need to get out, here's where you would get out. Having signage that's available. Remember where all the people seated in the middle? Could they see the exit signs from anywhere that they're sitting, and which one would they use, and could they get out? Number 2, that's staffing that's staffing all the gates. Having a person there, it unlocked and open so that it can be used. Number 3, temporary signage. Number 4, this bottom gate down here, which is onto 4th Street, is not a hard surface. So if you think about having to move a wheelchair or a golf cart or whatever you may need to do to exit out of that, you got to consider all those things and all those people to make it accessible for everyone. So, so having said all that, you kind of dial it down when you think of the total egress width and you figure out a maximum. That's about 4,713 people maximum in that area. And it's funny, when you look at all the pictures, wow, there's a lot of green out there. And boy, we should be able to get a lot more people in there. But you can bring them in. You also need to plan for getting them out. So those are the considerations in I think emergency evacuation if you need to. We want to, if we're going to have a large gathering like this, we need to consider the safety of it, and then getting people out and instructing them as well. So some of the training that would need to go along with that, instruction for people to be at the gates, communication for the people that are at the gates, and then even, I would be one to say at the beginning of the ceremony, here's your exits right here. If there's any a need to, we can exit these places and these sections go this way. So, yeah, large crowds are great, and it's wonderful to have them, but we want to have them safely, and we have a plan for if we need to use those exits. Any questions? That's all from plan that Gary and I kind of talked through, and measuring and footprint, and then there's plenty of square footage there to put a lot more people in there, but getting them out there is not.
So, yeah, they get to think about sprinklers and egress width. I get to think about the fun stuff. And you guys painted the stage right before graduation this year. So the student experience, we wanted to talk a little bit about, because we all remember our graduation, and like Pete said, a lot of you participated here. So I grabbed some fun pictures that, to me, really capture the student experience. And no matter which direction we go, whether we relocate or stick around and just make some changes, some of the things that are really, really important to our students and families won't change. Our grad walk, a couple of pictures there about when our seniors walk the halls of all of our schools. So cool. We always have amazing feedback and stories out of that. That won't change. Of course, we'll continue that. Our student speeches, student speakers, valedictorians, none of that would change. We'll have the ability to personalize our graduation. If we do go to a venue or a different site, we would always make sure that we get to keep our Othello flavor and all of the things that are important to us. Our junior flag bearers would be the same, they would participate as they always have. Really puts a exclamation point on our ceremony, as well as highlights those juniors who are working really hard for their GPAs and their time. Bottom left, there's a picture of Desert Oasis, which is always an amazing ceremony. Now we include our Skill Source and Open Door students in the Desert Oasis ceremony. But how cool would it be to have all of our kids together? One district, one ceremony. Maybe they have a stole, or we could do whatever we wanted there, but I just think that the unity and the work we've done the last few years to really bring things together would be really highlighted by a combined ceremony. And then finally, my favorite pictures in my scrapbooks are of after graduation, and families clearly would still get to bring in their signs and have their balloons and flowers and, take lots of pictures. So in addition to that, just a few things in talking to kids and teachers and parents. Limiting tickets, as you've probably, is what we would end up having to do, really creates an impossible situation for kids and families to determine who do they pick. Yeah, will my out-of-town relatives still come if they can't participate? Underclassmen friends probably are at the low end of the list, but those kids love to come to graduation. Meals and party options, say we went to a venue in Tri-Cities or somewhere where they could go have celebrations and bigger meal parties, that would be kind of a neat thing. And then finally, I'm sure Pete's going to go here, but we took a team of people that included some administrators and counselors who in the end, along with these guys, do the bulk of the work in the planning and the getting ready of that. And there's some really cool logistics and efficiency things that could really change if we went to a different type of a venue. And we could get into those details later, but we have a lot of support for some different considerations moving forward, but yet keeping our OSD feeling and color and our traditions alive.
All right, you still with us?
Yeah.
Hey, Pete, before you, I just wanted to jump back a couple slides. We put together some spreadsheets for you from the last 20 years of the graduations with some holes in it. You might be able to fill the holes in yourself. We just went off information we could verify. So you get an idea that our graduation has changed days, times throughout the years, and so has Desert Oasis. And if you want to research some of that, you can go on the Outlook archives, and that's a really cool read on some of that old stuff. Lindsay, your dad is quoted quite a bit 20 years ago from when he was on the board. So.
All right. I want to acknowledge the group and all their work and the perspective that they bring to the putting on this kind of event for our community and for our students. As Amy mentioned, we had an opportunity to take a benchmarking visit down to the Tri-Cities. And it was an interesting experience in that we got to watch the Hermiston School District, which is about 30 minutes outside of Tri-Cities, so a little bit closer than Othello, but not all that different, and a very similar size. we're headed that direction, and we'll probably catch the graduating class at Hermiston in the next couple of years. But for the last 2 or 3 years, they moved from their local experience in Hermiston to the Toyota Center in Kennewick. And when they shared that concept with us, we thought it was a little bit unusual, and then we decided to go watch. And so Ed Peterson was able to attend with us, Kat Atchison, this team. So we had a good representation from various seats in the school district, and this was a shot at practice. So the seats are empty. You don't really see a lot of Hermiston swag. It's just, hey, the kids are here and going to practice. This next image is from the following day, and this is sort of them walking in. So just a short clip. That's not them walking in, but that's where they're going to walk from. But that's the general feel. So they have their band there. The band gets bussed in. They have the security measures where everyone gets checked at the front gate. We went through metal detectors. The whole thing was set up. It wasn't assigned seating, but everyone had a good view. Everyone had a space. There were also on either end of the facility, they had video screens, and at 4 at a time, they would flash the senior pictures, so the yearbook picture and that kind of thing, that kind of vibe. They were also able to live stream it the way that we do here in the district. So all those options are available. That's sort of the general vibe and how it felt from my seat. The next one is them walk. So before we play it, these are all what they do in Hermiston is every high school teacher and administrator is required to attend. So they bus them in. They line up this little alleyway, and the kids walk in 4s. And I thought this was they make it their flavor. Like Amy mentioned, we would make it Othello flavor if we decided to do this. What I was trying to compare it to was the view that some of our spectators have here in Othello. What can they hear? What can they see? The ceremony, I think, here started at 7 o'clock. I got there at 6:50, and that's where I sat. I know that we have people in Othello showing up at 5:30 as soon as the gate opens to try and find a space so that they can watch. So there were some logistical pieces like that that made it more pleasant from a spectator perspective. Some of the differences I think we would notice, we're approaching that idea where we may have to limit tickets for students, and perhaps that's 8 to 10 depending on the number of students. Tim did some research and communicated with the folks at the Toyota Center, and I think they're right around 6,000, maybe even just above that. So we would feel comfortable with that number. We currently do the 2 ceremonies, OHS and DOHS. We'd actually talked about a 3rd ceremony, which would mean splitting OHS into 2 if we wanted to stay with some of the logistics, but I'm not sure how we would manage that. Outside security staff we've hired in the past, but we have to train those folks. They don't really know our people. They don't know our facilities. Here we would have on-site security as part of the services that they provide. Facility safety upgrades that Tim talked about. How do we get folks in and out? How do we manage parking? Those would be investments we'd have to make as a district to make sure that it's safe and appropriate for everyone. That wouldn't be a concern down there. The spectator screening that they have, the ample parking, moving folks in and out, certainly those systems exist. Greg mentioned the manpower that it takes here. You would think about this as a wash fiscally because we'll really be outsourcing that labor and that work to the folks down there. His guys have enough to do, and so I'm not sure that there would be any concerns about that move. Yeah, we do offer a flexible date here. You know, if we get bad weather and we have to change it, certainly down there it would be a firm date. You know when it's going to happen, and that idea about being in a climate-controlled space and what that might mean for spectators. So those were some of the differences we wanted to share with you, and perhaps some of the upgrades and improvements. Having said all that, back to the very first slide, the traditions in our community and in most communities around graduation run very, very deep. And so that's why we're not here today recommending something to the board or telling you this is what we think we're going to do. We want to let you know what our next steps are. So we have had a chance to reach out to the Toyota Center just to make sure we can get in line with folks who access that facility. Most of the schools in the Tri-Cities and the Tri-City area use them. We were able to secure a date for June 6th, which would mean a slight change in graduation, and that was the time slot that was available. But as we get into this process, if we decide this is not a this year thing, but maybe a next year or the year after, getting into that system and that flow of people who schedule these events is important for us. Our next step, we think, pending feedback from the board this evening, is to meet with the senior class just right after school starts, bring them together, run a very similar presentation, and have a conversation with them about it. Then we would think after that we'd want to meet with their parents and offer multiple opportunities for parents to provide feedback and for us to share the district perspective. We would then come back to the board with that reaction. Here's what the kids told us. Here's what the parents told us. Here's what we think we ought to do. And then we'd want to get in a conversation with the board about whether or not that's something that requires board approval. Because we're going off-site, we'd provide some of the additional detail about busing and those kinds of things. But I think what we're looking for tonight is a nod that says, hey, go talk with the students and go talk with the families, and then we'll meet again in just a couple months. And so that's what we wanted to share with you this evening.
I mean, we don't really have a lot of choices, right? Like, so I appreciate all the hard work that's gone into this, because we're in a rock and a hard place. Like, Othello graduation happens on Husky Field. Like, that's just what it is. But also, we can't fit there anymore. I'm so torn about it, because the logical part of me knows the logistics don't make sense anymore. But the emotional part of me is like, how could we take this out of our stadium? Like, this is Othello graduation. And Othello, we don't like change. Oh, no, we don't. It'll be interesting to see what the senior parents say. And if they're good with it and the students are good with it, I mean, we have to do something. I know that it's not just graduation that's an issue. I did have people from out of town say to me, hey, you guys got to do something about your sound system, and there's nowhere to sit that came to graduation. I wasn't there, but it's been an issue for years and is only getting worse. So it has to be fixed. But it's also a problem at football games. And I know our whole lives don't revolve around athletics, but going to a football game, there's nowhere to sit. Like, our stadium was built for 1980 Othello, and now we've just outgrown it, period. So I know that takes money and time, and we don't have either. So that probably going to Tri-Cities is the best answer for our graduation. But I know we had capital money that we did work with on the track a few years ago, and maybe that's something that we need to consider as a board, as a district, to say, like, do we have any capital funds that we could perhaps increase the size of our bleachers on both sides of the field? I've had people from Royal City and Connell that are friends of my family complain about coming to football games and saying, like, where do you expect us to sit? This side seats 50 people. Like, there's just nowhere to sit. So I also think that is an issue that needs addressed as well. It's not just graduation. We need to do something about accommodating more people as they come to more activities, more people at track meets, hopefully more people at soccer matches, but more people coming to football games and things like that. It breaks my heart to think of graduation going anywhere else. But change is part of life, so it is what it is. But I'm very curious to see what they say in October. And we'll do whatever we got to do.
I think the main thing is the parents. We need to see what they feel, because they have families, big families that come. So if they're all for it, I say we go and do what we can do best for the situation and the day. So, I mean, it's amazing. I noticed that we just kept moving from the back of the bleachers all the way forward, and pretty soon we will be sitting in that little 50 or less seated area for our graduates, because that's about where we have to go. Yeah, no, this is a lot of work. Wonderful, wonderful presentation, but it's a hard decision. So, but yeah, I think we have to ask them. Maybe this year's smaller, but in 2 years, Sebastian's year, I think they're going to want to know something better, because there's a big class there, isn't there? Big class.
I have shared concerns before just about transportation issues that families have. So my biggest concern if it moves is to make sure that there is enough transportation for as many people need to come from Othello as possible. I do think it's actually maybe an opportunity for our students to have something that is bigger and grander and maybe a little bit more pomp and circumstance and special. I think it could be marketed that way to be really amazing. And if faced with potentially half a class and then half a class and not being able to graduate with your entire class together, this is a better option. In terms of people that travel with family from out of town, Tri-Cities has a small airport and it has a lot more places to stay and eat. And so potentially maybe students would even be able to have more family come in from out of town. And a flexible date is great for people that live here. It's not great for people that come from out of town to try and attend something and then it's raining and they have to go back home and graduation's now going to be in a couple of days. The weather, it was beautiful. The graduation this year was absolutely beautiful. The weather was great and the whole program, the sound system had a little issue. You guys worked through that and it was an amazing job. Getting bigger is, I can't imagine how many more work hours for you guys to try and accommodate. So I don't have the history of having graduated from there, and so I don't have that piece. But I think moving to something bigger and grander could be a really special thing for our students too.
One of the issues you brought up around transportation, that's one of the items we've talked about as well. Marion didn't make the trip down with us, but we've talked about what Hermiston shared with us. So all of the students are bused there. They're required to ride the bus to the event and to they also go one day to practice. Then afterward, they can be dismissed to their families, so they can be signed out and go about their business. The administrators and the staff ride the buses as well, and they required board members to ride the bus so they would be there on time. So that was their practice. And then, oh yes, and then families. They did offer transportation to families, and what they discovered is after the first year, some folks took them up on that. But I think the second and third year, nobody got on the bus, but they offer it every year. If you want to ride down on a bus, the school district will provide transportation. We'll get you there and back. So that option will certainly be available for our families as well.
I'm like Lindsay, when you first hear the concept of it possibly moving to a different facility, it's a shock to the system. Takes it away, but then you sit and think about it for a little bit. Actually, it opens up the doors for possibilities for more grander things in it. Unfortunately, safety is one of the features we really have to think about now. Times have changed, and this really takes a good stance on the safety issues, and it takes a lot of the burden away from our staff and gives it to the facility where this could be held at. And I'm really glad that you've started the process of looking at it right now, because graduation to some of the families is a big tradition. I think I heard the number 11 almost is the average per student. And I think, again, that would open up to a larger number with a larger facility. Looking at those pictures, it looked like the stands were pretty full still with Hermiston. And I think it's a great idea. And like I said, I'm really glad that you're looking at it now so we could start to gather input from students, staff, parents, and everybody involved to let them start to think about it and think about the logistics and everything else that's involved with it so they could give a good input on it. So I really appreciate the presentation tonight.
Yeah, thank you to the team. Oh, Sebastian, would you like to add any comment?
Sure. I'd like to thank all of your hard work into graduation. It just ensures that our future classes will have a really, really fun, memorable experience with their families. I myself have about 30 members of my family living here, so it was going to be a lot of people at the graduation. And knowing that I don't have to limit the tickets means that I won't have to feel bad of not inviting one of my tias, which is my aunt, or uncles. So it just really saves me a lot of time and stress. Thank you.
Well, your reaction this evening is the kind of reaction we've had from everyone we've talked to about it.
Good.
They don't love it initially, and then you talk through it a little bit, and they're like, oh, okay, well, maybe. But no one's had to make the decision yet. In our ride down, there were a couple of people in there I thought, they're never going to get there. And by the time we left, we were only there like 45 minutes, an hour. They're like, we better do this. This feels great. So it'll be interesting. I think it's so important that we talk with the kids. And I get the piece about the families, but I remember as a parent and as an administrator what happened when we canceled for COVID and how the kids felt about that and how they still talk about it. So I really want to make sure we hear from the students, and we'll think about a way to engage with them in a large group and then offer some individual feedback, and then we'll go to the parents. So really appreciate your careful listening tonight, your questions, and these guys have been working hard thinking about it, and we were all a little bit nervous about sharing the idea, but sooner, what is it? Bad news doesn't get better with time.
Yes.
And so it's just something we got to think through. Thank you.
I really appreciate it. I'm going to date myself because when I graduated, we did have
St. Helens.
it was during Mount St. Helens, 1980, 3 weeks before graduation, and we had to end up moving graduation into the gym. I think we're about a class of 170. I can't remember quite, but we filled that gym, and if we have anything situation like that, we even had to limit who could come back then, I think to about 4 tickets, and we still filled that gym, and there was no way that we could even think about that if we had something similar or had to move a venue at a last minute. So
You could always do the remote.
Yep.
I think that will be 2 or 3 gyms, you know what I mean, all over
Yeah.
town,
Yeah.
remote, and that kind of takes away from that community piece.
Yeah.
Even though you're there, there's a part of it. You can do it.
mastered the drive-through.
yeah.
And my daughter was one of those that graduated in the COVID thing. Actually, she got a more personal message during that than she did with the large group thing. It was very, very personal. She was shocked how personal it was. So that was a good experience for us.
I think anyone who's been to a college graduation,
Yeah.
you see that we sat way at the top.
Yes.
And we still saw everything. We watched them walk in front of us. If we make a way so that they can go around every avenue of that big facility, people can take pictures. You still see them from way at the top.
CBC used the Toyota Center.
Oh, okay, yeah. So,
It's not really a bad seat. That's the thing.
no, no.
The way it's situated, you actually get it.
Yeah.
That's important.
Yes, it is.
I
Thank-
think,
yeah.
great, thanks.
Thank you.
I have one last question. If this idea becomes successful, would it apply to promotion?
Yeah, it would not apply to promotion. There certainly has been some conversation about promotion in our community. It's, again, one of those deep traditions. And it's one of the challenges, I'm glad you brought that up, Sebastian, for our maintenance folks, is to set up for graduation, then to go set up for promotion, and then to go make sure we're ready for DOHS, and then to make sure everyone has what they need at the end of the year for the celebrations and the assemblies that they're having. That's, again, one of the considerations we took in was, could we offer better services for those events if we took the pressure off our staff and our facility, and it felt safer, and everyone had a better view, and we could still make it feel like Othello, other than you're sitting in the Toyota Center in Kennewick. We really believe we can achieve all those things if we move forward with this, but right now, no impact to promotion. We wouldn't be moving down there.
Thank you.
Look on that sheet, we did a Sunday.
Really?
Yeah. And you go back and read the paper, your dad was there was a big article about your dad saying no Sundays, but it was things going on in the school year that they didn't want to, I think it was,
It was because it was the year after I graduated, so he didn't care anymore. I graduated in 2002, so it was all good.
I don't know if it actually happened on Sunday, that's what everything we read said on Sunday, though. The
Wow.
announcements were for Sunday, but there was a big article about it.
Any more on the superintendent informational items. Okay? Move on to policy review. We have a few more policies there to review, to look over. And upcoming events. August is coming up on us quick. Next meeting, the 14th, I will not be here, but Lindsay will be running
Yep.
that meeting. Of course, you've probably been getting all the emails from Marisa lately, so make sure you update your calendar. I think the only one there, all staff orientation, those times are still to be determined.
So question, on the 28th, new teacher orientation, is that something we need to be at?
It's something we've invited the board to in the past. It's
Okay.
a smaller event typically held at the corridor at the high school. Yeah, and so we do a quick breakfast with them. If you are able to attend, it would just be a chance for us to introduce you, name and face to our new staff members, and then they have a series of events that they participate in that day.
Okay. This location on the calendar says DOHS, so just making sure it's the corridor at the high school.
We had talked about DOHS for the training portion of it, but I'll double check on whether or not we'll be serving breakfast there as well.
Okay, and then on the 14th, we also have our admin retreat, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep, so we'll get you the times for that.
Okay,
Perfect.
initially it was brought up to possibly have the board meeting at 2 o'clock on the 14th.
Right
So
after.
the board could take care of business.
Right, yep,
at
so
one time,
the activity with the administrators would go from 10 to 2, and then at 2 o'clock we'd have the board meeting.
Perfect.
Yes.
Okay.
Any other things that need to be on the calendar?
I don't think so.
Okay, then we'll go on to board self-assessment of the meeting.
Great presentation for graduation. Really great content and a ton of information we need to know. Well-planned agenda. And a nice short meeting, very concise.
Not quite as short as the last one.
But
Um,
business done.
Yes.
Yep.
I agree with the presentation. It was really well done and left me with very few questions at the end, which is always helpful. Kind of answered questions throughout the way.
And Sebastian's update and moving to Instagram.
Yeah.
Using with him. No, it's too bad we can't have a full board, but fully understand her reasoning for not being here.
Yep.
Youth sports are very important to parents. Okay, any more? Okay. Then at this time, we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you.